The moment Amara Johnson's finger lifted from the publish button, Seoul's underworld opened its eyes, and they were all looking at her. 10:47 p.m. The cursor blinked once. The article went live with a sound like a held breath being released into the night. Amara sat back in her cramped Seoul apartment, the blue light of her laptop painting shadows across her dark skin, and watched the view counter tick upward. 100. 500. 2,000 in under 3 minutes. The headline blazed across the screen in both English and Korean. The Dragon's Ledger. How Min-Jae Vincenzo Han built an empire on blood and silence. Her hands were steady now, though they'd trembled for the past hour. 6 months of work. 17 interviews, 12 of them conducted in parking garages and 24-hour convenience stores where the fluorescent lights hummed loud enough to mask whispered confessions. 3 translators, one who'd quit after the first week when anonymous messages started appearing on her phone, one who'd ghosted her after his apartment was broken into, and one who'd ended up in Asen Medical Center with second-degree burns across his hands and forearms, and the kind of silence that spoke louder than any screaming could. All of it had led to this, a single article naming the man the entire city whispered about but never accused. Min-Jae Han. Vincenzo. The tattooed shadow who moved through Seoul's criminal underworld like smoke through fingers, impossible to catch, impossible to prove, impossible to pin down with anything more substantial than rumor and fear. Until now. Until Amara had done what no one else had been willing or brave or stupid enough to do, she'd named him. Put his face on the screen. Connected the dots between shell companies and disappearances, between real estate deals and bodies that washed up in the Han River, between legitimate businesses and the very illegal operations they laundered money for. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this Afro-Korean love story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more captivating episodes. Amara's phone buzzed. Then again. Then it didn't stop. Notifications flooded her screen, comments, shares, messages from anonymous accounts with numbers instead of names, reactions in real time as Seoul's massive online community discovered what she'd published. The Korean ones came fast and frantic. She fed them through her translation app and watched the reactions materialize: shock, rage, fear, gratitude, threats. Finally, someone said it. You just signed your death warrant. How much did they pay you to lie? Run. Now. While you still can. This is journalistic excellence. They're going to kill you for this. About time someone exposed these bastards. She closed the comments section before the negativity could seep too deep into her bones and opened her email instead. 43 new messages in 4 minutes. 46 now. 50. Her editor at the Seoul Independent hadn't responded yet, which was strange. Sung Min-ho had promised to be online the moment it went live, had sworn he'd stay up all night if necessary to handle any immediate backlash or legal threats. She shot him a quick message. It's up. Call me. The apartment felt smaller suddenly. The walls pressed in, and the sounds of the building, the hum of the refrigerator, the couple arguing upstairs in rapid-fire Korean about someone's mother and someone else's drinking, the distant wail of a siren cutting through Mapogu's night traffic. All seemed too loud, too close, too present. Amara stood and walked to the window, pulling back the thin curtain to look out at the neon-soaked streets below. Seoul at night was a living thing, all light and motion and endless noise, a city that never truly slept but only shifted gears from day chaos to night chaos. Street vendors still sold tteokbokki and hotteok on corners, their carts wreathed in steam. Taxis prowled for fares. Young people stumbled between bars and noraebang, their laughter carrying up to her 4th-floor window. But tonight it felt different. Heavier. Like the city itself was holding its breath right along with her, waiting to see what happened next. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, dark brown eyes that looked more tired than they should at 28, box braids pulled into a high bun that she'd stopped bothering to maintain properly weeks ago, the exhaustion written into every line of her face. She looked like her mother. Everyone who'd known Dr. Amara Johnson said so. The same sharp cheekbones that could cut glass, the same stubborn set to her jaw that broadcast determination from across a room, The same reckless conviction that truth mattered more than safety, that justice was worth any personal cost. Her mother, Dr. Amara Johnson, who'd come to Seoul 15 years ago as a human rights researcher for an international NGO and had never left. Who'd written about corruption and trafficking and the invisible people the city chewed up and forgot about. Who'd interviewed sex workers and homeless youth and migrant workers living 12 to a room in Garabongdong. Who'd published papers that made bureaucrats uncomfortable and exposed systems designed to hide abuse. Who'd vanished 7 years ago without a trace, leaving behind only a daughter who'd inherited her fire and a younger sister who'd been too young to understand why their mother never came home. This article wasn't just about Min-Jae. It was about finishing what her mother had started. About picking up the thread her mother had dropped, or had been forced to drop, and pulling until the whole rotten tapestry came apart. The lights in her apartment dipped. Just for a second, a flicker that made the laptop screen dim and the refrigerator's hum stutter into silence before recovering. Amara frowned and glanced at the ceiling light. It stabilized, burning steady again, but something cold crawled up her spine anyway. Old buildings had electrical problems. This was normal. Happened all the time in Seoul's older neighborhoods, especially in November when everyone was running space heaters. Except it had never happened before. Not in the 8 months she'd been living here. Her phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a notification. It was a call. Unknown number. Korean country code +82, but no other identifying information. Just digits that could belong to anyone. She let it ring 3 times, watching the screen vibrate against the small table, before answering. Hello. Silence. But not empty silence. The kind that had breath in it, the kind that meant someone was there, listening, waiting, deciding what to say or whether to say anything at all. Who is this? Amara's voice came out steadier than she felt, which was something of a minor miracle given how her heart was hammering. You should have waited. The voice was male, smooth, speaking English with barely a trace of accent. Educated. Cultured. Dangerous in the way that expensive things are dangerous, not through obvious threat but through the power they represent. Another week. Maybe 2. But you were impatient, Miss Johnson. You couldn't wait. You had to publish tonight. I don't know who you think you are, but... Amara Johnson. 28 years old. Nigerian-American, that you were born in Lagos and moved to the States when you were 12. Freelance journalist, primarily covering human rights issues in East Asia. Apartment 403, Mapogu District, near Hongdae Station. You take your coffee black with 1 sugar despite telling baristas you take it black, lying about small things. Interesting habit. You run every morning at 6, same route through Mangwon-dong, past the convenience store where you buy banana milk afterward. You video call your sister in Lagos every Sunday at 9 p.m. Korean time, never miss it. And you've been asking questions about a man who doesn't appreciate questions. Questions that could get people killed. The cold in her spine turned to ice that spread through her entire body. Amara moved away from the window instinctively, her free hand reaching for the baseball bat she kept beside the door, a gift from Min-Jae after her first threatening message 2 months ago. After someone had left a dead rat on her doorstep with a note in Korean that translated to stop digging or we'll bury you too. If you're trying to scare me, I'm trying to warn you. The voice softened, almost kind, which somehow made it more terrifying. Like a predator deciding whether to play with its food before killing it. You made yourself visible, Miss Johnson. That changes everything. You were useful when you were just another journalist asking questions no one would answer. Background noise. Annoyance at worst. But now you've published. Now you've put a name and a face to accusations. Now you're not just useful or annoying, you're dangerous. And dangerous people get dealt with. Permanently. Then why are you calling instead of just dealing with me? A soft laugh, genuinely amused. Because not everyone wants you dead. Some people find you interesting. Worth keeping alive. For now. As long as you remain useful in other ways. What other ways? That's what we're going to discuss. Very soon. A pause. Check your email, Miss Johnson. The one with no subject line from 10 seconds ago. Open it. Look at what we're capable of when we want to send a message. The call ended. Amara stared at her phone, heart hammering against her ribs so hard it hurt. Her laptop screen flickered again, and when it stabilized, a new email sat at the top of her inbox. No subject line. No sender name. Just an attachment. Video_403.mp4. Her finger hovered over it. Every instinct screamed not to open it. Every thriller she'd ever watched, every true crime podcast she'd ever listened to, every safety training she'd ever had screamed that this was obviously malware or worse. Don't engage. Delete it. Call the police. But every ounce of journalistic curiosity demanded that she did. Because if there was one thing Amara had learned from her mother, it was that sometimes you had to look at the things that scared you most. She opened it anyway. A video file. Grainy security footage, the timestamp in the corner showing it was from 20 minutes ago. She recognized the interior immediately, her building's lobby, the one with the broken tile near the mailboxes that the building manager kept promising to fix, the plastic plant that collected dust, the elevator with the slightly too bright fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sick. In the frame, a man stood near the elevator, his back to the camera. He was tall, at least 6 feet, wearing a long black coat that hung perfectly on his frame, expensive, tailored, the kind that cost more than Amara's monthly rent. He wasn't moving, just standing there like he had all the time in the world, like he belonged there, like he was waiting for someone specific. And when he turned his head slightly to check his phone, she saw it, ink curling up from his collar, dark scales and claws that could only be part of something larger. A dragon. The tattoo work was extraordinary even in the grainy footage, traditional Korean style, detailed enough that she could see individual scales. He looked up at the camera. For just a moment, maybe 2 seconds, his eyes found the lens. He wasn't smiling, wasn't threatening, just looking, acknowledging that he knew the camera was there, that he knew she'd see this, that he wanted her to know he'd been there, that he could have come upstairs, that he'd chosen not to. Yet, then the video cut to black. Amara slammed the laptop shut with shaking hands. She grabbed her keys, her wallet, the pepper spray Min-Jae had insisted she carry everywhere, her backup hard drives from the desk drawer, all the research, all the evidence, everything she'd need if she had to run. She didn't bother with a coat even though November in Seoul was cold enough to see her breath, cold enough that the wind off the Han River cut straight through thin clothing. She just moved. The hallway was empty, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead with that particular frequency that made your teeth ache if you listened too long. She took the stairs instead of the elevator, 4 flights down, her sneakers silent on the concrete steps. Her breath came fast and shallow, fogging in the cold stairwell that never quite got warm no matter the season. At the second-floor landing, she nearly tripped over something. A phone. Not hers. Sitting in the center of the landing like it had been placed there deliberately, like someone had left it specifically for her to find. Like bait. She stared at it. Kept walking. Made it 3 more steps down toward the first floor and freedom. Stopped. Damn it. Every thriller she'd ever watched, every true crime podcast she'd ever listened to, every instinct for self-preservation she possessed told her not to touch it. Told her to keep walking, get out of the building, call the police, do literally anything except engage with obvious bait left by obvious criminals who obviously wanted something from her. But if there was one thing Amara had learned from her mother, it was that sometimes the bait was the only way to catch the bigger fish. Sometimes you had to take the risk. Sometimes the story was worth more than safety. She climbed back up and grabbed the phone. The screen was unlocked, which should have been her second warning. A video was paused mid-frame, a dark room, a chair in the center, and a figure tied to it. She pressed play with a thumb that didn't feel like her own. The video was shaky, filmed on another phone probably, whoever was holding it not bothering to stabilize the shot. The figure in the chair lifted their head, and Amara's stomach dropped through the floor, through the building's foundation, through the earth itself and into some cold hell she hadn't known existed. Aoife, her baby sister. 17 years old, supposed to be safe in Lagos with their aunt, supposed to be in school and complaining about homework and dating boys their aunt didn't approve of and living a normal teenage life far away from Seoul's dangers. But there she was, thousands of miles away from where she should be, duct tape across her mouth, tears streaking her face, eyes wide with terror that no teenager should ever have to know, no one should ever have to experience. A voice off camera, distorted through a digital filter that made it sound mechanical and inhuman. Your journalist sister likes to dig. She digs into things that should stay buried. She digs up secrets that powerful people would rather keep hidden. So now we dig too. We dig into her life. We dig into her family. We dig into everyone she's ever loved. And we see what we find. We see what makes her stop digging. The camera moved closer to Ife, who was shaking, trying to speak through the tape, muffled sounds of fear and confusion and desperate attempts to understand what was happening to her. Come alone to the address we send, or we send her back to you in pieces. One finger at a time. Maybe a toe. Maybe an ear. Maybe we start with her pretty face. However long it takes for you to understand that some stories aren't worth telling. Some truths aren't worth knowing. Some names shouldn't be spoken. The video cut to black. A text message appeared on the screen, an address in Yongsan-gu, a commercial district near the old military base. No name, no explanation, no demands beyond her presence. Just a location and a time, 11:30 p.m. She had 43 minutes. Amara wanted to scream. Wanted to throw the phone against the wall and watch it shatter. Wanted to call the police, call someone, call anyone who could help. But her mother's voice echoed in her head, the last real conversation they'd had before she disappeared 7 years ago, a conversation Amara had replayed so many times she could hear every inflection, every pause, every weight behind each word. The system here isn't like home, Amara. You think you can trust the police, the courts, the people in power. But the people with real power in this city, they own pieces of everything. They own the cops who are supposed to arrest them. They own the prosecutors who are supposed to charge them. They own the judges who are supposed to convict them. They own the newspapers that are supposed to expose them. When you're fighting people like that, you can't rely on the system. You have to be smarter. You have to be willing to do things the system can't or won't do. Ife was in Seoul. Somehow, impossibly, they'd gotten to Ife. Had brought her here or had grabbed her when she'd arrived. When had she arrived? Why was she here? Had she been planning to surprise Amara? Had their aunt sent her for some reason? Had she just decided on her own to visit? None of it mattered. All that mattered was getting her back. Amara ran. The parking garage was exactly where the text said it would be, sublevel 3 of a commercial building in Yongsan, the kind of half-abandoned space that served office workers during the day and became a concrete tomb after business hours. The entrance was dark, the security gate propped open deliberately, she realized. They wanted her to come in. They were making it easy. The lights were dim and stuttering, casting long shadows between concrete pillars. The air smelled like oil and damp and something metallic that made her think of blood, though that might have just been her imagination running wild with fear and adrenaline. Amara's footsteps echoed as she entered, each sound bouncing off the low ceiling and multiplying, announcing her presence to anyone listening. She forced herself to walk, not run. To breathe. To think. She had her phone in her pocket, recording audio. It wasn't much, but it was something. Evidence if she survived. A record if she didn't. Some way to let people know what had happened to her and Ife. The black sedan was parked in the far corner, sleek and expensive, a Genesis G90, the kind of car that cost more than most Seoul apartments, the kind that screamed money and power. 3 men stood beside it. Even from a distance, she could see they weren't ordinary criminals. They moved like soldiers, still when they should be fidgeting, alert without being obvious about it, dangerous in the way that professional violence is always dangerous. They weren't trying to intimidate with posturing or weapons. They were simply competent. Which was worse. The tallest one saw her first. He said something in Korean low, brief, just a few syllables, and the other two straightened. Then he stepped forward into the stuttering light, and Amara's breath caught in her throat. He was younger than she'd expected. Early 30s, maybe. Sharp features that belonged on a runway or a movie screen, high cheekbones, strong jaw, perfectly proportioned in a way that was almost unsettling. Dark eyes that tracked her every movement with an intensity that made her skin prickle. His hair was styled back with product, revealing a face that was almost beautiful in its symmetry. He wore all black, turtleneck, slacks, leather gloves, the long coat from the security footage, and when he moved, the coat shifted enough to reveal more of the ink that covered his neck, a dragon, rendered in stunning detail. Scales and smoke curling up toward his jaw like it was in the middle of breathing fire. The tattoo work was masterful, traditional Korean style mixed with modern techniques, every line precise. He stopped 10 feet away. Smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just cornered something small and helpless and was deciding how long to play with it before the kill. Miss Johnson. His English was perfect, accentless, the kind that came from international schools or time spent abroad or both. I've been looking forward to this meeting. You've made quite an impression tonight. Amara's hand tightened around the pepper spray in her pocket, though she knew it would be useless. If these men wanted to hurt her, pepper spray wouldn't stop them. Nothing she had would stop them. Where's my sister? Safe. For now. He tilted his head, studying her like she was a problem he was working out how to solve, like she was a puzzle that might be interesting if he took the time to figure her out. You're braver than I expected. Or more foolish. I haven't decided which yet. Most people would have called the police. Tried to negotiate. Begged. But you just came. Walked right into an obvious trap. That's either courage or stupidity, and I find both fascinating in their own ways. Who are you? The smile widened, showing perfect white teeth. You wrote 8,000 words about me tonight. Spent 6 months researching my organization, my operations, my history. You put my face on your article, very nice photo, by the way, made me look quite menacing. Used my real name and my street name. Detailed my movements over the last 5 years. Connected me to 17 different crimes. And you don't recognize me standing right in front of you. Her blood turned to ice water. Her lungs forgot how to work. Her brain refused to process what she was seeing even as the evidence stood there smiling at her. Min-Jae, Vincenzo, the dragon. Standing 10 feet away, smiling at her like they were old friends meeting for coffee instead of a criminal who could kill her and make her body disappear without anyone ever knowing what happened. You, her voice came out as barely a whisper. Made a mistake? He finished for her, taking a step closer. One of his men shifted, ready to move if Amara tried anything stupid. Yes, you did. A significant one. A career-ending one. Possibly a life-ending one, depending on how this conversation goes. But it's a mistake we can work with if you're smart about what comes next. If you're willing to be reasonable. Amara pulled out the pepper spray, hand shaking but determined, knowing how pathetic it looked, how useless. I'll scream. You'll what? He didn't even flinch, didn't even acknowledge the threat as real. Call the police? Please, go ahead. I'll wait right here. I'm friendly with several officers in this precinct. We can all have a conversation together if you'd like. Compare notes. Maybe discuss how your article violates several laws regarding defamation and speculation presented as fact. He crossed his arms, the movement casual, unthreatening. Or you can listen to what I have to say, and maybe, your sister goes home tonight with all her fingers attached and her face unmarked and her mind still intact enough to function. The world tilted. Amara's vision swam, black spots dancing at the edges. She forced herself to focus, to breathe, to think past the terror flooding her system. If you hurt her, I haven't touched her. His voice turned cold, sharp, all the false pleasantness dropping away like a mask being removed. Yet? But other people want to. Very badly. People who think you know things you don't. People who believe your mother told you secrets before she died. People who are convinced you have information that could destroy them, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to find out if they're right. Whatever it takes. No matter how long it takes. No matter what they have to do to make you talk. My mother didn't die. She disappeared. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. Or something deeper that she couldn't read. He exchanged a glance with one of his men, a brief look that communicated volumes in a language Amara didn't speak, in a code built from years of working together, then looked back at her. "Is that what you think?" His voice had changed, softened slightly, something almost like curiosity entering it. "I don't think. I know. There was never a body. Never any evidence she was dead. Just gone. One day she was there, taking me to dinner, telling me about her latest research project, and the next day she wasn't, and no one could tell me why or how or what happened. The police said she probably went back to Lagos without telling anyone. Her NGO said she'd quit without notice. Her apartment was empty, like she'd never lived there. Like she'd never existed. But she wouldn't have left us. She wouldn't have abandoned me and Ife. Not willingly." Min-Jae studied her for a long moment, something complicated crossing his face, multiple emotions layering over each other too fast to identify. Then he reached into his coat. Amara tensed, ready to run, ready to fight, ready to do something even if it was futile. But he only pulled out a photograph, old, creased, the kind that had been folded and unfolded many times, carried in a pocket or a wallet, looked it over and over until the edges wore soft and the image started to fade. He held it out to her. "Take it." She didn't move. Didn't trust it. Didn't trust him. Didn't trust anything about this situation. He sighed and stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, cedar and smoke, and something else she couldn't identify, and see the fine detail of the dragon tattoo, the way individual scales caught the light differently. The smoke that seemed to move when he breathed, the eye of the dragon positioned just below his ear, watching everything with ancient wisdom. He held the photograph in front of her face, not touching her but close enough that she had no choice but to look. "Look," he said quietly, almost gently. "Just look." Amara looked. And her world cracked open, spilling everything she thought she knew into chaos. The photo showed two people standing outside a small restaurant, the kind with plastic stools on the sidewalk and handwritten menus in the window, and the smell of fish and spices spilling out into the street. One was a woman in her 30s, dark-skinned and beautiful, wearing a bright Ankara print dress in gold and orange that seemed to glow in the sunlight, her head thrown back mid-laugh, like she'd just heard the best joke of her life. She looked happy, alive. Real in a way that the memories Amara carried had started to fade into something less solid, less tangible. Her mother. Unmistakably her mother. Looking younger than Amara had ever seen her, more carefree, more herself. The other person was younger, maybe 20, leaner than the man standing before her now, with a bruise darkening one side of his face and a bandage wrapped around his left hand. He wasn't smiling, but he was looking at the woman beside him like she'd just saved his life. Like she was the only solid thing in a world that had stopped making sense. Like she'd given him something he'd never known he needed. A younger Min-Jae. "Busan," he said quietly, his voice carrying weight that spoke of memory and grief and complicated things she couldn't understand yet. 12 years ago. Your mother found me bleeding in an alley behind a fish market after a territory dispute went bad. I'd stolen something I shouldn't have stolen from people who don't forgive theft. They beat me, stabbed me twice in the side, left me for dead in a back alley that smelled like rotting fish and my own blood." He paused, still holding the photograph between them. "Your mother was walking home from a clinic where she volunteered, treating people who couldn't afford regular hospitals. She should have left me there. Should have called the police or walked away or pretended she hadn't seen anything. Instead, she took me to her small apartment, patched me up with supplies she'd taken from the clinic, and told me I was too young to die for old men's pride. She told me I could choose something different. Be something different." He took the photo back, slipping it carefully back into his coat like it was precious. "She kept me hidden for 3 days while I healed. Fed me. Let me sleep on her couch. Told me stories about her daughters, about you, how smart you were, how determined, how you wanted to be a journalist, just like her. About your sister Ife, how she was still just a baby but already showed signs of being stubborn and fierce. She showed me pictures. Made me promise that when I left, I'd be better than what I was. Better than the violence that had almost killed me. Better than the system that created people like me. Amara's throat was too tight to speak. Her mind was racing, trying to fit this new information into everything she knew, everything she'd believed about her mother's disappearance. I owed her my life, Min-Jae continued, his voice softer now. When she disappeared 7 years ago, I looked for her. For years, I searched. I used every contact I had, every resource, every piece of leverage I could pull. I wanted to find her, to thank her, to tell her she was right about me, to know if I'd managed to be what she thought I could be. And did you? Amara's voice came out rough, barely audible. Did you be better? His smile was bitter, self-aware. I tried. I failed more often than I succeeded. But I tried. And I built something separate from the people who'd tried to kill me. Something that operated by different rules. Not good rules exactly, but better ones. Less cruel ones. You're still a criminal. Yes. I've never claimed otherwise. His eyes met hers, unflinching. I've done terrible things, Miss Johnson. Hurt people. Killed people when I had to and sometimes when I just wanted to. I won't lie to you about that because lies would dishonor your mother's memory. But I've never trafficked a human being. Never forced anyone into prostitution. Never sold drugs to children. Never killed anyone who wasn't actively trying to kill me or mine first. I've never taken someone's choice away from them. His jaw tightened. There are worse people in this city. Much worse. And they're the ones who most likely killed your mother. And now you're here because I named you in an article. No. I'm here because you published an article using financial documents that match information from something called the ledger. Documents that should have been destroyed 12 years ago. Documents your mother helped hide because she understood what they meant. He moved closer, his presence somehow both dangerous and steadying. You used receipts and transaction records from 2019 that exposed the Dragon Sect, my primary rival and the organization that most likely killed your mother. You used their documents to expose me. Do you understand what that means? Amara's mind raced, trying to process, to understand. The documents had been encrypted, buried deep in her mother's cloud storage alongside research papers and interview transcripts and years of accumulated data. She'd assumed they were part of her mother's general research, evidence she'd collected for her human rights work. She'd never questioned where they came from or why they were so specific, so detailed, so damning. It means, Min-Jae continued, his voice dropping lower, more intense, that Choi Thorne, head of the Dragon Sect, now thinks you're working with me. That your mother told you where the rest of the ledger is hidden before she died. That you have access to information that could destroy his entire organization, expose every official he owns, unravel every operation he runs, and the empire he's spent 15 years building. And he will take you apart piece by piece, bone by bone, nerve by nerve, until you tell him where it is. And when you can't tell him because you don't know, he'll keep going anyway. Because men like Thorne don't accept "I don't know" as an answer. But I don't know where anything is. I just had my mother's old files. I believe you. He stepped back, giving her space to breathe, to think. But Thorne won't. Which is why you have two choices, Miss Johnson. You can go to the police, tell them everything you know, watch them file a report, and do nothing while Thorne's people systematically burn through everyone you love trying to find information you don't have. Your sister. Your aunt in Lagos. Every source you've ever interviewed. Every friend you've ever made in this city. Everyone who's ever helped you or spoken to you or been photographed with you. They'll all become targets. They'll all suffer. And then you'll die anyway, but only after watching everyone you care about die first. Or you work with me. You help me find what your mother hid before Thorne does. You use your skills, your connections, your research ability, your journalist's eye for finding truth in lies, your very public platform, to help me draw Thorne into the open where we can end him. Permanently. You want me to be bait. I want you to be what you already are, a journalist who doesn't know when to stop digging. The difference is, this time, you'll be digging where I tell you to dig. Following leads I provide. Publishing stories I help you craft. And this time, you'll have protection. Resources. Information your mother never had access to. A chance to actually survive long enough to finish what she started. Amara wanted to tell him to go to hell. Wanted to run. Wanted to grab her sister and get on the first flight back to Lagos and never think about Seoul or journalism or her mother's ghost again. But Ife's terrified face kept flashing in her mind, and her mother's voice kept whispering, "Some stories are worth dying for. But more importantly, some stories are worth living for. Worth fighting for. Worth becoming something you never thought you'd have to become. How do I know my sister is really alive? How do I know this isn't all just?" Min-Jae pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times with practiced efficiency, and turned it toward her. A live video feed. Ife, sitting in a room Amara didn't recognize, nice room, actually, comfortable looking, not the dark horror she'd seen in the ransom video. Ife was untied now, no longer bound or taped. She was eating cup noodles, the cheap kind from 7-Eleven that she'd always loved, and looked scared but unharmed. The timestamp in the corner read, "Now." "She's at one of my safe houses," Min-Jae explained, his voice matter-of-fact. "Being watched over by people I trust with my life. She thinks she's being protected from kidnappers who tried to grab her at Incheon Airport. She doesn't know I'm the one who brought her here. She doesn't know about our conversation. And as long as you cooperate, she never needs to know any of this. She can go home thinking you saved her from some random criminals, never knowing how deep this actually goes. You kidnapped my sister. I saved your sister's life." His voice hardened, the pleasantness disappearing entirely. Thorne's people were already moving on her. They knew she was flying into Incheon 3 days ago. They had someone waiting at the airport with a van and zip ties and a very specific plan for making her disappear. My people got to her first. Intercepted her. Brought her somewhere Thorne can't reach. You published that article without thinking about the consequences. Without considering that people would look at everyone connected to you. I'm not the only one who knows your sister's flight schedule, Miss Johnson. I'm just the only one who cared enough to keep her alive. The weight of it crashed over her like a wave, threatening to pull her under. Ife had been in danger because of her. Because she'd been so focused on the story, on the truth, on finishing what her mother started, that she hadn't considered what it would cost. Hadn't thought about how her actions would ripple outward and touch everyone she loved. Just like her mother. Just like the choices her mother had made that led to her disappearance. The pattern was repeating, and Amara was too deep in it now to see a way out. "You have until I count to 3 to decide," Min-Jae said, his voice gentler now but no less firm. 1. You can walk away. Try to fight this alone. Watch Thorne destroy everyone you care about while the police do nothing. That's option 1. Amara's hands clenched into fists. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that working with a criminal made her just as bad, that her mother would be disappointed in her for compromising, for making deals with devils. But her mother had worked with him too. Had saved him. Had trusted him enough to hide evidence with him, to rely on him, to believe he could be better than what he was. 2. His eyes never left hers. "Or you can work with me. We find what your mother hid together. We expose Thorne and the dragon sect completely. We finish what she started. We make sure her death meant something." That's option 2. She thought of Ife, scared and alone, eating cheap noodles in a safe house and not knowing why any of this was happening. She thought of her mother's files, of the mysteries still unsolved, of the truth that was still buried somewhere under years of lies and violence and corruption. She thought of the article she'd published just hours ago, the one that was supposed to expose the truth, but had instead painted a target on everyone she loved. 3. Fine. The word tasted like ash, like betrayal, like the death of something innocent she'd been carrying inside herself. "I'll work with you. But I want guarantees. I want my sister safe. I want her out of Seoul, back to Lagos, away from all of this. And I want your word, whatever that's worth, that you won't hurt her." Done. I'll arrange transport tomorrow. Private, secure, untraceable. She'll be home within 48 hours with enough money that your aunt won't ask questions. He gestured to the car with one gloved hand. "Now get in. We have work to do, and time is something we don't have much of. Thorne will have already seen your article. He'll be planning his response. We need to move first." "Move how?" He opened the back door of the Genesis, waiting with infinite patience. "Get in and I'll explain. But understand this, Miss Johnson. From this moment forward, your life isn't your own. You go where I tell you. You publish what I approve. You follow my rules. And if you betray me, if you try to contact the police, if you try to publish something without my approval, if you try to run, the consequences won't be on you. They'll be on your sister, on your aunt, on everyone you've ever loved. Do we have an understanding? The garage lights flickered again, casting strange shadows that made the dragon tattoo on his neck seem to writhe and breathe. Somewhere above them, Seoul continued its endless night, people laughing, eating, living, completely unaware of the deals being made in the darkness beneath their feet. Amara looked at the car. At Min-Jae. At the phone showing her sister's face, alive and safe for now, but only for now. She thought about her mother, about the choices that had led to her disappearance, about the photograph of her laughing in that bright dress beside a young Min-Jae, about the secrets she'd kept and the prices she'd paid, about the story that had cost her everything. Amara dropped the pepper spray, let it clatter uselessly to the concrete floor, and got in the car. The door closed behind her with a sound like a vault ceiling. The leather seats were heated, soft, more comfortable than anything in her cramped apartment. The interior smelled like expensive cologne and new leather, and something darker, power maybe. Violence held in check. Min-Jae settled into the seat beside her, close enough that she could see where the dragon tattoo disappeared under his collar, sprawling across what she imagined was his entire torso. Close enough that she could count the scars on his knuckles, 7 on his right hand, 5 on his left, evidence of a life lived violently. The driver pulled out smoothly, merging into Seoul's late-night traffic. The city blurred past the tinted windows, neon signs in Korean and English, crowds spilling out of bars, delivery motorcycles weaving through traffic, the endless pulse of urban life. There are rules, Min-Jae said, his voice conversational now, almost friendly. Break them and our agreement ends. Understand them and you might survive this. What rules? First, you don't publish anything without clearing it with me first. Every article, every social media post, every conversation with other journalists. I need to know what you're putting out there because Thorn will be watching everything you do. Amara's jaw tightened, but she nodded. Second, you don't go anywhere alone. One of my people will be with you at all times. For your safety and to make sure you don't do anything stupid. Like trying to escape? Like trying to contact the police or anyone else who might interfere with what we're doing. Remember, your sister's safety depends on your cooperation. She wanted to argue, to fight, to tell him she wasn't his prisoner. But Ife's face on that phone screen kept her silent. Third, you don't lie to me. Ever. About anything. I value honesty, Miss Johnson. Your mother understood that. She never lied to me, even when the truth was difficult. I expect the same from you. And if I do lie? His smile was cold. Then you'll discover that I'm much less forgiving than your mother was. They drove in silence for several minutes, the city passing by in streaks of light. Finally, Amara asked, "Where are we going?" "My place. You'll stay there while we work. It's secure, comfortable, and most importantly, it's somewhere Thorn can't easily reach. Your sister is already there, though she doesn't know you're coming. You're keeping us both prisoner. I'm keeping you both alive." He turned to look at her, his expression serious. "You need to understand something, Miss Johnson. The moment you published that article, you stopped being a journalist and became a target. Thorn has resources you can't imagine. People in every level of government, law enforcement, media. He can make you disappear as easily as snapping his fingers. The only reason you're still breathing is because I got to you first." How reassuring. It should be. Because despite what you think of me, I'm the only thing standing between you and a very painful death. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. We have 48 hours to make our first move. Thorn will be planning his response to your article. We need to hit him before he hits us. Hit him how? Your mother left clues. Breadcrumbs leading to where she hid the rest of the evidence. We're going to follow those breadcrumbs and find what she hid before Thorn does. And then we're going to use it to destroy him. You keep mentioning this ledger. What exactly is it? Min-Jae was quiet for a moment, considering how much to tell her. Finally, he said, "It's a record. Names, dates, transactions, crimes. Everything the Dragon Sect has done for the past 15 years. Everyone they've paid off. Every official they own. Every victim they've silenced. Your mother stole it 12 years ago and hid it because she knew if it ever went public, it would bring down not just the Dragon Sect, but half the power structure in Seoul. Then why didn't she publish it? Because she was afraid. Not for herself. Your mother was brave in ways most people will never understand, but for you and your sister. She knew that publishing it would make everyone connected to her a target. So she waited. Looked for the right moment, the right way to release it that wouldn't get her daughters killed. His voice softened. And then they found her anyway. The car turned off the main road, heading toward Gangnam. The buildings here were taller, newer, more expensive. This was where Seoul's money lived and played and pretended it was clean. I'm going to ask you something, Amara said quietly. And I need you to tell me the truth. Did you kill my mother? Min-Jae turned to face her fully, his eyes meeting hers with absolute clarity. No. I loved your mother. Not romantically, she was like a sister to me, or maybe a mother, I was never quite sure which. She saved my life and then spent 3 days trying to save my soul. I would have died for her. I certainly would never have hurt her. But you know who did? I suspect. I don't have proof yet. But yes, I believe I know who gave the order. And when we find that proof, when we have everything we need, his expression went cold, dangerous. I'm going to kill him. Slowly. Painfully. In a way that makes him regret every breath he took after hers stopped. There was such conviction in his voice, such absolute certainty, that Amara almost believed him. Almost trusted that he meant what he said. Why should I believe you? She asked. Why should I trust anything you say when you've literally kidnapped me and my sister? You shouldn't. His answer was surprisingly honest. Trust is earned, not given. But your mother trusted me. That should count for something. And more importantly, he leaned closer, his voice dropping. You don't have a choice. Thorn is coming for you whether you work with me or not. At least with me, you have a chance of surviving. Alone, you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. The car pulled into an underground parking garage, descending several levels until they were deep beneath the city. When they finally stopped, they were in a private area with only a handful of other expensive cars. The driver got out, opened their doors with military precision. Min-Jae led her to a private elevator that required a key card. They ascended in silence, the numbers climbing. 10, 20, 30, 40. Finally, they stopped at the penthouse level. The doors opened onto a space that took Amara's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Gangnam, the district's lights spreading out like a constellation of wealth and ambition. The apartment was huge, had to be at least 3,000 square feet, but it didn't feel cold or sterile like she'd expected. There were bookshelves crammed with everything from Korean literature to American thrillers. A kitchen that looked actually used. Plants, actual living plants, well cared for. Photographs on the walls, though she was too far away to see who was in them. Your sister is in the guest room, second door on the left, Min-Jae said, removing his coat and draping it over a chair. Beneath it, his turtleneck revealed more of the dragon tattoo. It sprawled across his shoulders, down his arms, a masterpiece of ink and pain. She's sleeping. One of my people gave her something mild to help her rest after the trauma of the airport. She'll wake in a few hours. I want to see her. You will. After we talk. He moved to the kitchen, pulling out a bottle of expensive whiskey and 2 glasses. You've had a difficult night. Sit. Drink. Let me explain what happens next. I don't want to drink. I want to see my sister. And you will. In 10 minutes. But first, you need to understand the situation you're in. He poured 2 glasses anyway, sliding one across the counter toward her. Your mother left you 3 things hidden in Seoul. 3 pieces of a puzzle. We need all 3 to have enough evidence to destroy Thorn. The first piece is in a place she used to visit regularly. A place you might remember from your childhood if you ever came to visit her here. I came to Seoul once. When I was 16. Amara's mind raced back through memories. We celebrated my birthday. She took me to Namsan Tower. We put a love lock on the fence. Min-Jae smiled, genuinely pleased. Smart woman, your mother. Hiding evidence in plain sight among thousands of other locks. That's our first target. We go there tomorrow at dawn, before the tourists arrive. We retrieve what she hid, and we move to the next location. And the other two? We'll figure those out once we have the first piece. Your mother was clever. She designed it so that each piece leads to the next. A trail only you could follow because only you would understand the clues. Amara finally took the whiskey, not because she wanted it, but because her hands needed something to do. What if Thorn finds the locations first? Then we fight him for them. And we make sure he loses. Min-Jae raised his glass. To your mother. To finishing what she started. And to surviving long enough to see Thorn destroyed. Amara didn't raise her glass. To my mother. And to getting my sister home safely. That's all I care about. Then we want the same thing. He drank, then set his glass down. You can see your sister now. But don't wake her. Let her rest. Tomorrow is going to be difficult for both of you. Amara left her glass untouched and walked down the hallway to the guest room. She opened the door quietly. Ife was there, sleeping peacefully in a bed that looked more expensive than any furniture they'd ever owned. She looked so young in sleep, so vulnerable. 17 years old and caught in a nightmare she didn't understand. Amara sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to wake her, and just watched her breathe. Alive. Safe. For now. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I got you into this. She stayed there for a long time, until Min-Jae appeared in the doorway. Your room is across the hall, he said quietly. Get some sleep. We leave at 5 a.m. for Namsan. You'll need your strength for what's coming. What is coming? War. His expression was grim. Thorn has seen your article by now. He'll have figured out that we're working together. He'll be planning his response. We need to move fast, stay ahead of him, and hit him before he can regroup. The next few days will determine whether we survive this, or whether we join your mother. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be honest. He turned to leave, then paused. Your mother once told me that truth is worth any price. I didn't understand what she meant then. I think I'm beginning to now. He left her alone with her sleeping sister and her racing thoughts. Amara looked around the room, at the expensive furniture, the soft lighting, the view of Seoul spreading out beyond the windows. This was a gilded cage, beautiful and comfortable and absolutely a prison. She'd gotten into Min-Jae's car voluntarily, but she wasn't free. She'd agreed to work with him, but she wasn't safe. She'd made a deal to protect her sister, but the cost kept climbing. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, saw dozens of notifications about her article. It was going viral, being shared across social media, picked up by other outlets. People were talking about it, debating it, some calling her brave and others calling her reckless. She opened one message from a number she didn't recognize. You made a mistake tonight, journalist. You named the wrong dragon. But don't worry, we'll correct your error soon. You, your sister, and everyone you love will learn what happens to people who forget their place. Sweet dreams. T. Thorn. It had to be. Her hands shook as she deleted the message. She wanted to tell Min-Jae, but what would be the point? He already knew Thorn was coming for them. Amara looked at Ife one more time, then left the room and walked to the one across the hall. It was nice, too nice, with a view of the city and a bed that looked like it cost more than a year's rent on her old apartment. She didn't bother changing clothes. Just lay on top of the covers, staring at the ceiling, watching the lights of Seoul play across it. Somewhere in this city, her mother's secrets were hidden. Somewhere, the truth was waiting to be found. Somewhere, Thorn was planning how to kill them all. And here she was, in a criminal's penthouse, having made a deal with the devil to fight a worse devil, hoping she'd survive long enough to see justice done. Her mother would have understood. Would have made the same choice, probably. Would have walked into the same trap with her eyes open because sometimes the story was worth the risk. Sometimes the truth was worth dying for. Amara just hoped it wouldn't come to that. She closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept spinning, kept racing, kept trying to make sense of everything that had happened in the past few hours. At 10:47 p.m., she'd been a journalist publishing an article. By midnight, she'd become something else entirely. A collaborator. A prisoner. A player in a game where the stakes were life and death and the rules changed by the minute. Tomorrow, she'd go to Namsan Tower and retrieve her mother's first clue. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tomorrow, she'd start down a path that would end either in justice or in joining her mother in whatever darkness had claimed her. But tonight, she was just a scared daughter who'd lost her mother 7 years ago and was finally, about to learn why. Outside her window, Seoul glittered and hummed with endless life. Millions of people living their ordinary lives, completely unaware of the war brewing in the shadows. A war Amara had just become a soldier in, whether she was ready or not. Thanks for watching part 1. This episode ends here, but the story continues. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe so you never miss the next episode.